Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and this week we have another one of our special deep dives for you. So, this time I sat for 3 hours with the Skeptical Shaman. You know her as Rachel White, and she has been on the podcast before. Now, Rachel is again the Skeptical Shaman. She has a podcast by the same name, but she also does divination. She has created her own oracle decks. She does one on one coaching. She has beautiful writings on a blog. She has just so much work available to support you on your path. So, today, what we talk about in this first hour of our conversation, we do talk about the business of woo. So, she does have ways that she works with practitioners to help them get more focused on the business side of this work if you do want to create a business. So, we talk about that. We also talk about flower essences, which are a big part of her work, and also her flower essences deck. And I will put the link for all of that down in the show description. If you remember Rachel, or if you're familiar with her work, you know that she pulls no punches. She's pretty direct. She is funny. And yeah, we just had a really good conversation that I think will support you just like all of these conversations do. So I would love to hear what comes up for you, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, so we are here with Rachel White, the Skeptical Shaman, and I'm so excited that we get to have this length of time with you because your work is so juicy. You're such an interesting person, and you are a truth teller. And so I think everyone will really enjoy having more time with you today. I know I'm going to. So thank you for agreeing to do this.
Well, thank you. And I think you're a fellow truth teller. I think real recognizes real. And
Yeah.
and forgive me, everybody listening, because this will be on for some time. If I slurp my herbal tea, I apologize, but that's what it is. I'm not on a weird CPAP breathing machine. It's just I don't know how to drink tea without making noise. So
I
thank
can't
you
drink
in advance for your
anything.
understanding.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to know, just so the listeners know, although you'll be hearing this over the week, we are sitting together now for 3 hours, which is
Yeah.
so juicy. And we usually don't get to do this. So you did come on Reiki Radio probably a couple of years ago now. It's been a while. And we did get to learn about some of you and your work then. But as I said, over time, I'm just like, wow, Rachel's really, really interesting. And one of the things I would love to start with is just giving everyone a little bit of background because you were very corporate, to say it.
Yes.
You were very corporate minded. But now here you are in this realm of the esoteric and a lot of different perspectives of it. What was that like for you before you even started with all the shamanism and everything that you practice?
Well, I have to tell you, I started with shamanism in my early 20s.
Okay.
So it was kind of always there, but it was, and even in corporate. So just for background, I worked at companies like Deloitte and large globally traded, publicly traded corporate real estate firms. So it's
Mm.
the nadir of corporate. It's not
Right.
like a cool corporation or something like that. It was very buttoned up and very conservative. And even in spite of that, everybody kind of knew I was, quote, weird. Some people refer to me as a witch. I'm not a practicing witch, but they don't know,
Yeah.
And I never felt it was mean, by the way, ever. So I wasn't fully in the closet, but I was a bit of a, to use a Blade reference. I love Blade. I love comic books. I was a bit of a day walker.
Huh.
And it's not like I consciously code switched, but I lived in both worlds. And Totem Readings, which is the name of my spiritual practice where I see clients one on
Yeah.
one, I did that on the nights and weekends when I wasn't working
Okay.
for about 10 years and then transitioned to Totem full time in April of 2020, start of COVID. Figured this is an unambiguous message from spirit, from the universe, that life on planet Earth is about to permanently change in dramatic ways. So now or never.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's funny because someone else, I was doing an interview with another podcaster. She goes, "Wow, it's so brave that you took the leap." I go, "To be clear, I was planning on resigning. I wrote a resignation letter. In fact, I also went with my now husband on a trip to Turks and Caicos, like time to get my vacation and get my performance bonus and all this stuff
Yeah.
before quitting. So, not exactly the most honorable way to do it. And I got laid off the day before I was going to quit. And I
Wow.
got, a settlement, I got paid out and I was able to get COVID unemployment. So I always tell people it's important to be honest. I don't like rewriting history, even when it's mine. I'm not like a hero figure in this. It was like, oh, well, it's a good thing I was getting organized. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And frankly, it's probably intuition that was guiding me to that anyway. The inevitable was coming. And so I just got prepared. And since then, I'll level with you, it's been very weird.
Mm.
When you think you're really out and proud about something like this, doing it full time and having to engage with the world that way. And they're like, "What do you do for a living?" You're like, "Oh my God, I have to say I'm a shaman and I read tarot cards and stuff." Like it sounds nuts. So there is a bit of that I've continued to shed in the last 5 years. And I will tell you, I talked to a lot of former coworkers who are both still in corporate and who left, and they're pumped to see what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Like all of their illusions about what it was we were all doing, or what even corporate is, or what the business world or America is right now, those have been shattered, I
Yeah.
think. And everyone's just kind of like, all right, I guess that's a thing.
Yeah.
And so it's been exciting. I had a phone call with a former coworker of mine named David, who is very senior. He's an executive, like leader of the company I was most recently at. And he said, he goes, "I don't think I can go back." He goes, "I've been out of captivity too long." He's like, "There's a whole world out here." He's like running for local office where he
Oh,
lives. He bought, I think, a half a cow, and he got a meat freezer. Like, he's like, "You can just live." And I was like, "Yeah, man, you can live. But there is a downside to all this innovation, spirituality, freedom, and fun, which is I'm the worst boss I've ever had. That's just honest. I'm working on that. It's a core focus for me in the year of the wood snake is
yeah.
to slow, embrace gaps, and not be in the doing as much constantly. I used to be very good at this in corporate, and it always benefited me. And then when it's your own thing and the stakes are real, it's like,
Yeah.
just when
I
you thought you had a
actually
handle on it.
I want to ask you some about that. And I wasn't,
Yeah.
I had it down. I know that you do offer for people a Business of Woo program, but
Yeah.
I love that you bring this up because it is something that a lot of people don't talk about. And I even say too, if I had the choice, I mean, I would have never chosen this path or this route or be my own boss and all these things. Listen, that was nowhere on my radar.
Yeah.
And the same, I went through a layoff and then this all just kind of unfolded. But I am curious about that part because I love you called yourself a day walker, but you still
Hmm.
have, I want to say it almost, you seem like a person who has integrated all of the aspects of yourself instead of trying to fit into one persona or the
Yeah.
other. Like you really have done this process of integration. However, no matter your intention, no matter how talented you are, no matter how much you understand the work, it can be hard to do this as a business. Could you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yes. And actually, the integration that's where the work comes in. That's where it
Yes.
gets hard, honestly, because before, in my two worlds, which I wasn't hiding, but
Yeah.
it was almost like I had a little landing strip. If one didn't work out, I could
Yeah.
do the other. Now that it's all integrated, and also you understand this, having self-published a deck, self-publishing your work, when you're fully integrated and then you put all of yourself out there,
Yeah.
you are unbelievably vulnerable in a way that you can. The map is not the territory. You can hear that and think you can handle it. When you're in it, it's different. Because I sell things on Etsy. Someone sends you a nasty note or something and
Yeah.
it slaps different. I remember not caring at all about any of it. Corporate, totem, like I cared, and I in the sense that I put my best foot forward and I
Right.
was showing up and whatever, but I didn't get butt hurt. and I didn't spiral as a business owner of like, oh no. And also, I will say too, the whole parasocial social media Yelp culture has changed dramatically in the last 5 years
Yes.
as well. So my fears are not utterly irrational. Some of them are rational. I've seen people get, quote, canceled or Yelp campaigns organized to ruin them because they posted something someone didn't like somewhere.
Right. Right.
And so this is a real thing. And I have, an OCD and a PTSD diagnosis. So being a business of woo practitioner in this time and place has re-triggered all my shit
Yeah.
that I probably thought I had on lock, because I've been in and out of therapy and I have these tools, but it brings it all to the surface and you really have to just integrate them and handle it and transmute it. And ultimately, I think the point of surrender that I try to get back to is I was never in control before anyway.
Mm.
I just had an illusion. It's a bit of a soft myth that I think was just in my head.
Yeah.
There have been many points in my life when I was closer to homelessness or absolute abject disaster than I am now. It's
Right.
just that now I have an awareness and I'm attached to it. It's emotionally and psychologically, spiritually meaningful for me and paying attention. So the neuroses, man, they're real.
Yeah.
And also, doing the business of woo mentoring work. It's funny because there's the balancing act of I tend to be a little bit more on the hypervigilant, anxious part of the spectrum, but other people are like, spirit's just going to take care of me.
Uh,
And it's like, no, sometimes you got to
you
grind.
got to do,
Not
yeah.
all the time. Don't do what I've done last year, the wood dragon year. But you do have to hit the gas pedal sometimes. Sometimes you need a website and not just a vision board.
Right.
So it is a constant balancing act, just like yoga or Ayurveda or any of these practices where it's almost a daily, check-in of where am I out of balance? What's my North Star? How do I put one foot in front of the other without getting overwhelmed or paralyzed or whatever it is? And also to tune out the noise. I mean, it sounds funny because I do mentoring work, but one of the first things we work on is stop listening to influencers. Stop listening to these quote proprietary methodologies or that you need a social media team. You don't need anything. You don't need to do anything the way anyone else is doing it. And all those people are selling something.
Yeah.
They really are. And I've had meetings with them because they'll pitch me and stuff. The numbers do not make sense when
Oh,
you ask
believe me,
big girl
my
questions.
email box is flooded with it. Right.
Yeah, especially now that the economy is compressed. It's
Hmm.
like you're going to get pitched hard for a bunch of things that, by the way, that's just that person trying to make money.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily good for you. And so one of my focus areas with that mentoring work is let's get into your thing. Let's really figure out if it's viable. And I'll be honest and but supportive. And how do we build a value proposition? How do we differentiate you? What are the things that you can do for your psychic work, your business every day and not get tired of? Because let's focus there. Because then you can go and it doesn't feel like a job. I mean, if this is going to be miserable, just go get a real job in
Right.
an office or a warehouse. Call it a day. This should be fun. It should be additive. You should have energy and enthusiasm for it. But
Yeah.
it also should make some business sense. And that part of it's not that hard.
But that's the
It's not.
part I think a lot of people get caught up, right? Because most of us do have some kind of background in like corporate or some type of corporation we're working for prior to even trying to move over into this is
Mhm.
going to be my lane of work. And I think it's so important what you're saying. And that's where I think people get stuck, like trusting in their own value or trusting
Yeah.
in what inspired them in the first place. And even for you, that dance, because it is so different. It's different working for someone else versus trying
Yeah.
to be authentic and also putting on a business hat. And I think that's where a lot of people in this realm get kind of stuck is they feel like this realm must be separate from the practical sides of it. But because of who you are, was that kind of like an easy dance for you? Or did you still have to figure out how does this realm work in business?
It was easy, but I will tell you in retrospect, I think I had some inarticulated imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
There was a big part of me that was like, assuming I didn't know stuff when
Yep.
really the truth is it's a lot like the Wizard of Oz. Nobody really knows. Everybody's
Yes.
just trying shit out. So, I think getting through that, and that was just a matter of releasing a lot of ingrained patterns. I worked full time in corporate real estate when I was in college.
Uh,
So we're talking decades
yeah.
and decades working with the same people, having the same rhythm to your day. It just, I was shooketh in ways I wasn't expecting all
Yeah.
the time. And also just the world being crazy on top of that,
Yeah.
and fear and anxiety. And, the client facing work has been significantly more challenging and more rewarding, but people are not doing well and they're overwhelmed. They're very anxious. And I don't know if you've noticed this in any like one-on-one sessions or energy work, but you have to kind of work with people a little more to get them to receive
Yeah.
because they're so overstimulated and saturated. And like, I don't know how to maybe articulate it perfectly, but there's a lot more pre and post care and methodology work that
Yes.
has to happen in a session.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is one of the things in this realm that often isn't taught, how much of that has to be integrated in, like the
Yeah.
actually conversing with people, seeing where they're at, really kind of getting a gauge of how do I bring them even into their body and be here and feel safe enough
Yeah.
to exchange with me. So it's not just laying of hands. There are other components that come in that we often have to learn just through the
Yeah.
process of, yeah, holding the space.
And so I'm on a journey. The map is not the territory. And one of the things I try to do with my business of woo, it's like a smart ass thing to call it, but it's also what it is. Mentoring clients is I tell them about my mistakes,
Hmm.
whether those were internal, prisons of the mind, limiting beliefs, or old outdated myths, or whatever, or behavioral things like things I spent money on. I wish I
Yeah.
hadn't, but what I was still able to get out of it. Right, like
Right.
I'm big on the silver lining report from anything. And I don't know if I told you when we first met, I was working on trying to get a book deal
Mm.
because I like writing, and hopefully we could talk about that a little bit later.
Yes.
And it was wild. They're like, "Well, you have to purchase Instagram followers. You need at least 40,000." I go, "But if they're not real people, they're bots." They're like, "That doesn't matter." Like the whole thing was wild. And some of
Wow.
these were big publishers, big agents. And then I started talking to friends and things like that. And they had book deals and they weren't getting paid. And the contracts were not supportive of an author. And just you learn all this stuff. But through that process, I paid a consultant to kind of take me through it. And I wrote a book proposal and had it formatted and brought a lot of, I put a lot of effort into it and ultimately decided to not even pursue it, let alone, whether they wanted me or not. I think I'm a
Right.
little too out of the box for a lot of publishers.
Yeah.
Anyway, if I'm being honest, and it was like, yeah, but I still have this idea, and it helped me articulate what I do. It helped me develop like an elevator pitch for me, for the podcast, for my practice, my point of view. And also, I now take bits of that book proposal I wrote and I put them into modules for my spiritual transformation coaching program because the exercise forced me to put things on paper that I had just done for 15 years.
Wow.
So should I have spent the money I did on that consultant? No. Lesson learned the hard way, but also you're able to pull a win out of that. And I think that matters, is trying to be constructive and not beat yourself up or be filled with regret.
I think that's one of the things, though, if you do decide to do this as work, no matter what you decide is work, it doesn't matter if it's this within this sector of spirituality, no matter what it is. I think that's one of the things people do have to know. There is an investment there. You're going to have to
Yeah.
invest in yourself, invest in the business somehow, some way. And it is not cheap. And there will be a lot of lessons learned through the investments made, just like what you're saying. But listening to you, Rachel, I'm kind of like, how did you bring it all in? Because you know how when we start in this work, there could be a lot of different layers that are revealed to us about ourselves, right? So you have like the line of shamanism. You also have this line of where you do intuitive herbalism. You also are this incredible writer. You're also very curious. And in your podcast, you do these incredible interviews, right? A lot of people get even overwhelmed with there's so much potential of what I could do that then it paralyzes them into doing nothing.
Yeah.
So how
Yes.
did you
Analysis
navigate that?
paralysis.
Yeah.
Well, I think number one, you see it in corporate, and having done innovation work
Hmm.
and like global strategy work in particular, you see incredible ideas die in
Yeah.
committee and analysis paralysis and people trying to quote boil the ocean instead of just doing stuff. And one of the things I always admired about the tech industry, and there aren't many things I admire, but they had a little motto in Silicon Valley, and it was run fast, break things. And
Oh,
said
wow.
another way, fail small, fail early, fail often. Because you're going to encounter, if you're innovating, you're doing things no one's done before, at least not the way you're doing them, you're going to encounter failures, problems, challenges. It's inevitable. So there's no amount of strategy or planning that you can bake into your business that's going to prevent any of that. So you might
Yeah.
as well just get in there and do it. And then also, I would say, you know, we talked about this a little bit before we hit record. I just talked to one of my clients the other day, who's, by the way, editing my podcast now. Shout out to Natalie. And I went to a comedy show here in Austin. I don't know if you know that I love doing that. My husband is very
Yeah, we talked
kind
about
to
it.
drag me out. And we saw Ari Shafir, the premiere of his new special, which is called America's Sweetheart, and he was there.
I just
And he
watched
did
it
a,
the other night.
okay.
Yes.
So he did a Q&A, and I raised my hand. He goes, yeah, you. I go, will you come on my podcast? And he said, yes. You know,
Oh,
I'm paraphrasing. We had kind of a back and forth, and he was very sweet, actually. And I told Natalie this, and she goes, oh my God, you just asked him. I go, Natalie, when this is something people don't tell you when you're a grown up, you can just do stuff.
yeah.
And so when you said all these areas of interest, what it is my curiosity leads me, you know, curiosity and enthusiasm, right, leads
Yeah.
me to things. And then when I'm there, I go, well, why can't I just do this? This seems like a thing I want to do, or this
Mm.
seems useful. And I remember, you know, at my last company when we created the global innovation program. And as a part of that, we had to define what an innovation is. And we came up with, and I stole it in part from Peter Thiel. Shout out Peter Thiel, libertarian, gay icon. He's a genius, a very, very polarizing figure. But he said an innovation is the answer to a question nobody's asking yet.
Mm.
And what that means, though, is you're going to be so ahead of things because you're creating a market or a product or whatever. You're going to be creating demand, not
Right.
resolving or answering demand.
Yes.
That you have to have the courage of your conviction. You have to be kind of a rebellious person. You're an Aquarius. I bet you have plenty of that in you
Yeah.
too. And you have to be patient because you're going to be at this spot and you got to wait for everybody to come visit you there, catch up with you there, those that are interested. And so there's also a degree, I think, of discipline around consistency that is crucial to all of this, where it's like, you know, I didn't want to make flower essences and do it for 6 months and then give up on it. And it didn't
Yeah.
produce a profit in those first 6 months.
Right.
You have to hang with it. And that means you have to love it just because you love it. I love, you know, I planted seeds this week. I love the garden. It gives me an excuse to make something with my hands. I hand bottle and formulate everything. I put the labels on myself.
Yeah.
I package them for Etsy people myself. I happen to like that because it feels after years of being on Zoom shit and like Microsoft SharePoint and what, like, it's real. I see
Yeah.
it at the end of my day, what I've created. And I love flower essences. So if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
But you also have to be ready to educate people on what the thing is in
Right.
this space. Do you know many people ask me what is a flower essence? Or on Etsy, they're like, "What's in it?" I was like, first every time I'm like, the ingredients are listed. Here's a screenshot. Please go read. Anyway, side note. That's just me being. I have too much Gemini in my chart for that shit. Where I'm
But
like,
the
come on, let's go fast.
But
But
I love that you bring this up because that's another thing that I see a lot in this realm, and it points to that part of the authenticity. And I love that you highlight. First of all, I feel like you're giving everyone a class right now. I hope they are taking notes or go back and take
this is just me
notes.
on my bicycle. My poor
Listen,
husband's subjected to this 20 minutes every day. Thank you for
it's so
listening.
good. But the authenticity piece, because we do get excited by a lot. And I
Yeah,
think sometimes, let's say, for example, people will go to a class, get excited by what they heard in the class, and then all of a sudden now they want to share that with everyone and everything, but they haven't really taken it in to fall in love with it deeply in their own way.
yeah,
They only took on the way that maybe the the teacher or the author or whomever, they took on the impression of how that person lived it. But you really bring it in. And that's where I think it helps a lot with that imposter syndrome that I think most of us go through in this work
Yeah.
until you figure out how is this authentic to me. So like what I'm doing isn't Rachel's version, but it really is. She may have inspired me, but I had to like go all in for what is my relationship to this.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Um, I think it's easier for me because I'm wired, probably because of my work with innovation in
Hmm.
corporate, to abandon things and not see them as failures.
Uh,
So if I start something and it is not in alignment, I just let it go and I really don't think about it again.
yeah,
So I'm good with there being, branches on the tree that die out. And maybe I'll circle back to it in 5, 10, 20 years. It just may not be its time for me right now.
right.
And and this is also, by the way, a core of feng shuiism
Mm.
of you have to clear out the detritus, the clutter. You have to observe when you're not in flow, when you're running into what they call Po energy, which means to clash, like a dead end,
Mm.
right? Why is this so hard? Every time I try to do X, Y, and Z, it's hard. It's like the universe is trying to tell you something. Let it go. Let
Yeah.
that thing go. Whereas the other piece, you'll notice the winners, the winning ideas, the ones where you should really dig in, serendipity, synchronicity, flow, the luck, and the helpful people, which is a very big thing in feng shui. There's a bagua for helpful people. Those coming in to help you, those are signposts that that's a branch that you should foster and nourish and nurture and grow and
Hmm.
really stick with it. And the other thing we do both in the, I have a spiritual transformation coaching program and a business of woo mentoring program, but the first month in both is somewhat similar where we really dial into the content of a book called Eye of the Lotus Psychology of the Chakras, written by Dr. J. Dr. J is a real energy worker who trained my friend Roger. Shout out to Roger. The book upended my idea of what chakras were, how they worked, etc. And we get into it because what it really is about is your most dominant chakra, mind sacral,
Mm.
tells you about the work you're here to do and what you can do and never get exhausted of.
Yeah.
Second, chakra dominant people like making stuff. We like creating things. We like to use our body in our day too. And they're all different. And it's like drilling into that will tell us a lot about the delta between your idea of a thing and what it really is. So a lot of clients too, I set up early practice sessions if they think they want to be a medium, they think they want to be an energy healer. I go, well, let's practice. They're like, well, I'm not there yet. I'm like, trust me, this is a good idea because they'll either love it and be like, what was I worried about? Oh my God. Or they go, it is so different being the practitioner
Right.
and the recipient, and I don't like it. So we go back to the drawing board. So it's that fail small, fail early, fail often thing,
Yes.
so that we're not, 6 months down the road on an idea that when you come out of the gate and start offering the service, you end up hating it.
Right.
Yeah. So just, stress testing, experimenting, beta testing things, and getting a supportive community that's loose. It doesn't have to be overly structured. I'm second chakra person, so I don't really like group shit. But just something where, like, if I really believe in someone's new idea, I can think of 3 to 5 people who will also get it, who would give them good, constructive feedback.
Right.
That's not just affirmative bullshit. They're not just
Yeah.
blowing smoke to make them feel good. They really are like, no, this is what I would spend on this. And I would send my friends to you. Like those hearing that stuff, I think is super important when you get started.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah,
is 100%. But I love how, even again, you point to how a lot of this is so experiential. Because I
it
think,
is.
again, like we have an idea. If I go to corporate, that model is already built, so to speak. So I get in, I'm hired to do a thing. There is no questioning really around what I'm coming in to do. And so I think there's an expectation too. Like if I'm going to all of a sudden be a practitioner, like people have an idea of this is what it's supposed to look like and it's supposed to work because I'm doing the things rather than recognizing, just like even you're saying, that line of authenticity or connection or passion around it that
Yeah.
brings us in the frequency of it. But I really love Rachel God, if I had known you 15 years ago, right? The
God,
whole
if I had known you
idea,
15 years ago.
we would have killed it. No, but the whole idea of being able to let go, knowing things will come back around, that
Yeah,
is so important because I remember trying to force things, or when things finally I had to let it go, it feeling like a failure. Whereas now I do have that understanding of just because it has to be on the shelf doesn't mean it's dead. It's just not for right now. And it is interesting the way when you don't attach, the way things really do come back in, but they come back different than what you thought they were supposed to be. So I'm glad you
yeah.
shared that with people.
Well, this was kind of stamped into me at a soul level when I read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act. Have you ever read that book?
No.
It's phenomenal. And the audiobook's great. He has a very hypnotic, beautiful Zen voice. And he's a music producer and he's a creative, but the whole book is about like the creative act should be this spiritual, organic experience for you.
Mm,
And letting ideas go or thinking something you're writing or you're building is going to be beautiful and it's not. And but understanding that you've still learned something, you've refined something. It's all this organic alchemy
yeah.
and allowing it more and more, but then also having discipline where that matters. Like doing woo for a living, I think you have to be really thoughtful about the containers around where anti-structure exists, which is the pure psychic work, the liminal stuff,
Yeah.
and putting anti-structure in the anti-structure bucket, and then putting structure where you need structure where it benefits you,
Right.
right? Because all things in balance. And what I've noticed people like you and I tend to struggle with is they want everything to be fluid and airy fairy and anti-structure in areas where it's like, no, you need QuickBooks or you need a website, or you need to think through your editorial calendar for your Substack, or
Right.
you have a really, really popular podcast. Actually, someone just wrote a review of mine referencing that they heard me on your podcast by name just the other day. Side note. So people are still going back through your
Yeah.
old episodes, right? Which is incredible. You have to be organized. You're taking other people's time.
Hmm.
There's an exchange there, and it's like it's be polite by being organized.
Yeah.
It a lot of this business is building real relationships and
Yes.
not being a dick.
Oh, honey, could you say that one again? That's
It's today
seriously.
it was so funny. We were getting ready and you're like, listen, we're going a long time, you can take breaks. I was like, man, I just peed, I got my water, I got my tea, I have my chapstick. I'm set up because I don't want to be rude. I'm your guest. This is a gift that you've offered me. It's really thoughtful. I have a lot of gratitude around it, so the least I can do is be sober, clean, organized, and reciprocate this gift you've extended with my own energy for the moment, right?
I feel the
And I'll
same.
joke with clients because they'll be surprised. I wear a lot of blazers, mainly because I don't like bras. I call them breast prisons. So it's a way for me
Yes.
to look professional while not wearing a brassiere. And they'll be like, oh my God, you're like, in a suit jacket, whatever. I go, at a minimum, you should expect someone who does what I do for a living to be sober, clean, polite, and punctual,
Right.
right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's about respect. And the more you respect yourself and your business with that structure piece, the
Yeah.
more the business is the woo respects you, I
Yeah.
think. There's a lot of prima donnas in what we do. And it's
Oh.
never the kids that are like even, this is going to sound terrible, but like that impressive on paper or otherwise.
Hmm.
Have you pitched yourself to podcasts before as a guest?
No.
It'll be
No.
the podcast you've never heard of where you get a response from someone who's like, that'll be $10,000. And
Wait,
you're
wait,
like,
wait. But what I have received, which is
what?
mind
Yeah.
blowing to me, is I've received emails asking me if I will be a part of something. And again, they haven't, we'll say they haven't built their audience yet, but they'll have all of these lists of
Mm,
requirements of what I should have in terms of like how big my email list should be and how many
yeah.
followers I should have. And it's like, how are you asking of me what you don't even have? That's very interesting
There's
to
a
me.
lot of that.
There's a lot
There's a
of
lot
that.
of that. And the busier people with the bigger audiences, the established businesses, whatever metric you want to use, generally speaking, like
Hmm.
98% of the time, are the coolest or the most
Yes.
responsive and the lowest maintenance. Because guess what? The shit's not that hard. It's not that deep.
Right.
Someone sends you an email, you just email them back.
By the way, see, no bra strap. I'm with you, sis. I just keep the
Yeah,
camera.
it's,
Yes. But I want
I
to
got to
ask
let
you
my
about
freak flag
this,
fly.
honey. I'm with you. I have to ask you this in the first hour because there are so
Yeah,
many other things for us to talk about. And the flower essences are behind you.
yeah,
I'm really curious about because this is a big part of your business. You love it so much, just so people know as well. You even have a flower essences deck that is gorgeous. I should have grabbed
thank
it,
you.
but it's gorgeous that Rachel has. And I'll put the links for everything in the
By
show.
the way, I've got it right here. I really do.
Oh,
So this is
yes.
the card I pulled for myself this morning. No cap. This is real. I really do this every day. Morning glory. And to
Oh,
be fair, I have more energy today than I've had for about a week. And I was like, that makes sense.
yes.
Yeah,
I
I had
mean,
a little more
they're
vim in
beautiful.
me. Thank
Well, the
you. Yeah,
thing
Emma
is,
Cook did the art. I believe in human artists. So shout
yeah.
out to Emma.
Well, I love the way you, I'll say the way you translate the flowers. And I'm
Yeah.
saying this because I have another flower deck from many, many, many years ago. But the association that the person put with the flowers, I was just like, what? Like, I don't understand this. Where your deck made everything very clear, I understood. And so it also even made me more curious about the not just the medicinal properties, but even like the magic, the essence, quite
Yeah.
literally, of the flowers. But I was so curious because you have the tinctures, you have the deck. What is it like for you when you're out in your garden? By the way, I've seen your videos of you and your chickens. Hilarious, so cute.
One of
But
them, Cersei Lannister, is molting today, and she's in a very bad mood.
oh
It's
no,
very funny. She's a cute, cranky little chicken. Her feathers are everywhere. Yeah.
it's the name Cersei, yeah, the cranky one.
Yeah.
But not she, but you out in the garden, or you in relationship to the
Yeah.
flowers. I was just so curious of like, what is that like? Like, do you sit and talk to them? What's your relationship there?
Yeah, like in my mind's eye, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how I do a lot of my psychic work. I'm not big on ritual magic or saying a lot out loud. I probably should, though. What if it works? I mean, what if I've been getting in my own way this whole time? Um, I really, growing up in downtown Chicago, living there my whole life, to have the ability now that I'm in Texas to have a front and backyard
Yeah.
and to sit in the backyard and have it be private. If you're a city person listening to this, you understand that that's unheard of,
Right.
right? And so the solitude and the quiet are really blessings, but also being surrounded by things that are alive, it's really good for you. And
Yeah.
I think it's been something that's been missing in my life for a very long time. It's very grounding. It's health and life affirming. And this week I planted a bunch of seeds. We have an early growing season here in Austin, and it's wild. You do that and you look at it. It just looks like containers of dirt, and you're like, there's some part of you every time goes, there's no way anything comes out of this
Mm.
because it's crazy. In a weird way, I'm
Yeah.
probably revealing the city kid I am, where I'm like, you just put this shit in the dirt, guys, and it turns into stuff. But it's wild
It's
when you start to
incredible.
see it.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite problem, which is too much growth. The sun
Hmm.
here is incredibly strong, and you tuning into that and seeing something come out of almost nothing. Some seeds are specks of dust, like poppy seeds or something. You don't even see them after you plant them. And it's this exercise in, faith in the mechanics of the world, understanding that everything around us has the capability to thrive,
Hmm.
and that we're surrounded by medicine, whether it's spiritual, energetic, biological, medical. It's medicine.
Yeah.
And it's been really transformative for me. And what's funny too is people will criticize me for not filming in the garden. I get a lot of you need to and you should emails. So heads up, if you want to curry favor with me, don't do that. It's that second chakra again, telling you. The more you get that book too, everybody read Eye of the Lotus. I have no business anything with him, but it's just a great book. But they'll say, you really need to film in the garden and walk us through it. And I go, my life, my actual life is not your content.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important thing for anybody listening to this. Have very clear boundaries about what brings you joy as a private citizen as a shaman, herbalist, a human being, things that are joyful to me because, in part, that they're private. Like I'll film the chickens because they're hilarious,
Yeah.
right? And I take pictures and things like that, but it's not going to be my daily vlog from my garden. It ruins it. It sucks all the joy out of it. I
Yeah.
don't like social media. I don't like being on camera, being made up,
Yeah.
being in full drag every day. The whole beauty of the garden is I'm covered in mud. I have no makeup on. I'm dressed like Tucker Carlson or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And like it doesn't matter. I'm just in it. There's a practice of presence with it. And so that's what it gives me, I would say. And you learn the energy of the plants when you grow them. I would recommend anyone interested in making flower essences, try and grow them because you really tune into that vibration. I think it's what enabled me to write the booklet the way I did because you get to know them.
See, and that's the part. And so, I mean, you listen, you have said so many nuggets. I don't even know if you probably don't even realize, but just even that beauty of you sharing, I'm in it. This is not necessarily for, and another thing in the times that we live in, a lot is for social media. A lot is
Yeah,
for, it's a lot is performative. And a lot is because I think I have to do this in order for, I don't know, recognition, whatever it may be. Meanwhile, here you are highlighting and emphasizing, no, I mean, the real importance here is your work, your connection to whatever it is that you're doing. And that's not necessarily for, I mean, listen, believe me, I understand. If you look at my social media, you see none of my
yeah,
private anything. And it's the same thing. Like, for example, you saying that, I can't imagine going into my own meditation, one that I'm not guiding anyone, I'm not just my own personal connection, the way that I do it. If it were being filmed, I just
yes.
imagine the feeling of that would take me out of that connection, that reverent, that space where I could lose myself. Because now I'm thinking about the camera that's on me.
Yeah. And there's no way to not. That's
Right.
dishonest.
Right.
Sorry. And, there is a product that comes out of the garden that you can buy. I make something and I make
Yeah.
that something available to everybody. And so figuring out what part of your business of woo is commoditized and
Right.
accessible to others and which isn't, I would also say with social media in particular, it's a lot of free labor that feeds an algorithm that's training AI, among other
Yes.
things. And they sell your data and they sell advertising on that data.
Wait, just as a side
And
note, do you use Word?
oh, yeah,
Did you turn off the thing so
yes.
AI
Oh,
can't
yeah.
scrape it?
I hate the AI spell check anyway,
Mm-hmm.
across the board. Like, I have an English literature degree. I
Mm-hmm.
know how to write. Don't, because I really am terrified of it eroding
Yeah.
my skill.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to, it's a perishable skill. You use it or you lose it. So I
Right.
want to use it. And yeah, if something is free, you're the product,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so a lot of people create all this content because they think it's how they're going to make money with their business, but people just take the free stuff and they keep it moving. And I would just ask anybody listening to this, really honor yourself and the sweat equity and the equity that goes into your projects. And this is going to sound way harsh and I don't mean it to be, but to quote Kelly Catron, one of my heroes who owned a fashion PR firm, fuck you, pay me. The money you give me, you get something real. You get a deck, you get a flower essence. That's the thing. It doesn't come with 24/7 Rachel support. It
Right.
really doesn't. You don't get to
Yeah.
have me on speed dial or any of this other shit. And you don't get to like see my life all the time.
Yeah.
And that used to be the default setting, right?
Yeah.
So I would really say it's not about being, because money is not my primary North Star with Totem. I don't think it can be if you're going to be creative and authentic.
No.
I think you have to make sure you have mechanisms in place to capture return on investment and to pay your bills. But also, it's like there's a lot of work. There's a lot that I've invested. I've gone to workshops, trainings, bought books, blood, sweat, and tears. So you want a piece of this, pay me.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of emails asking for free advice, and I'm like, listen to the podcast and subscribe to the Substack.
Right.
Other than that, here's the booking page of my website.
Yes, honey, believe
Yeah.
me, I know. Actually talked about it on the podcast years ago. Someone sent an email to me so upset that I would charge for classes. And I remember being so confused by
Yeah.
I have all of these resources that are free, such as the podcast, that are free to you, but not free to me. I still have to pay
Right.
for providing
For
this.
me, it's $300 an episode.
Right. So it's
Full
like,
transparency. That's not free.
no,
Yeah.
it's not free. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have to be okay with you may be criticized by people who don't understand. You may be criticized by people who aren't doing what you do because they're afraid to take that leap, but you can't let that outside noise deter you from how this work is going to work for you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just interviewed someone who actually interviewed me on her podcast. Her name's Sarah Ray, and she's a manifestation coach, abundance coach, and she did the bravest thing I can think of. She came on my podcast. So the theme of the podcast is kind of like, let's be honest.
Hmm.
And the truth is usually somewhere in the messy middle. So we evaluate grifters, weird gurus, cults, whatever, but we also get into what's real about it. And she came on and talked about the fact that she got into it thinking she was going to be a millionaire. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of people do. And now she's working 3 jobs. She's married, she's got little kids.
Yeah.
One of those jobs is at a gas station.
Wow.
And when she and I met, when I was on her podcast, she was really honest with me when we were recording. And I said, if you feel brave enough, come on the podcast. Let's talk about it. That episode's going to come out this weekend, by the way, from when we're recording this. And I think it's going to be paradigm shifting for people to hear because
Yeah.
everybody lies. All these business coaches, spiritual ascendants, code, whatever it is, they feel the need to paint a really curated, abundant picture because they think if they're honest about a dip or a valley in their business that you're not going to want to work with them. And I
Right.
think it's the opposite. I think people value honesty and authenticity.
Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
I remember even again, I guess I've talked about my whole journey on this podcast, but I remember talking about how, especially at the beginning of this, I didn't know how I was going to pay for anything. I mean, let alone
Right.
just like my life, even the classes that I wanted to take and all of these things. It was hard. It was hard. It was a scary time. Honest to goodness, even hindsight, I can't tell you how things worked out sometimes, but it was not at all easy. And because of that, though, Rachel, at the start, I did have this like fear of I have to make money with this because my stability was at question. I went from corporate knowing when I was going to get paid every other week,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, everything. It was easy to now I have no idea. Not only did I not know what I was doing fully, I didn't know there were just so many things. It was very, very
No small
scary.
business owner knows where their money is coming from next month
No,
at all, full stop.
no.
You can have an idea, you can build estimates and models, and you get
Yeah,
people signed up for things or whatever, but you don't know until that
no.
money shows up,
Yep.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yes. And it
That's
was
stressful.
it was very, very stressful time. But to your point, it took a lot of recognizing how that was affecting me personally, but also how it was affecting my relationship to this work that I was in love with. It was making me
Yeah.
start to resent it. And so I think people really have to check that too of, the motivation around how you're moving. So on one hand, yes, I still have to be practical and I still have to, create things that there's an exchange for. I can't work for free. However, I still have to be in a space where I'm not so afraid that it paralyzes me and that becomes the reason that I'm working. It's
Right.
a
I
tricky
know.
dance.
It is. And, the flower essences, I would probably not at this scale or volume, I'd make them for myself anyway.
Yeah.
I'd want to have a garden anyway.
Yep.
And, I think that's a really good filter for people. And, I always wanted to make a tarot deck. I
So
wanted
I
to
want
make
to
the
ask
flower
you
essence
about
deck.
that. The
Yeah.
flower essences, since we were in that vein, and I'm only saying this because we're about to like move into your second episode, but
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about which flowers you chose for the deck? Because I imagine with all the work that you do with making these flower essences, there's so many to choose from. Like, was it
Yeah.
hard for you? Did you feel like you were leaving anybody out?
No, the deck is it only includes essences that I've grown,
Mm.
myself here and that I make flower essences out of. So I didn't do anything that was theoretical in the
Yes,
deck because
gotcha.
I thought, stick to what you know, kid, one of
Yeah.
those things. And it's interesting, the plants, this whole thing that came together largely from meditation and dream. So if I had a dream and there was a plant or a tree featured in the dream or in
Hmm.
a meditation that came up, I would just, without researching, go buy non-GMO, organic seeds or a small, what do they call those bulbs,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And I would just understand that there was a reason for it. And so that's kind of the last 4 years of this thing coming together. And then looked up what other people had to say about it, but then sat with it and beta tested the tincture myself and gave it to friends to get their feedback
Yeah.
too. And so, all of that's just been an extraordinary experience of discovery because you discover things that you weren't expecting and that nobody else has written about,
Yeah.
maybe. And that's fun because I'm not innovating how they're made. I'm doing it the way they did it in Europe, 2000 years ago. It's not a new kind of thing. It's a classic flower essence made in like the old world way. But I think everybody's capable of an innovation where their curiosity and excitement can go and discover things just for
Yeah.
themselves. And maybe these flowers have a different vibration here in Texas than they would in New England too,
Right.
or being grown by a different person, or the list goes on. So to me, that potentiality of options is really fun.
I have to tell you, because back when we did first meet a few years ago,
Yeah.
and now I'm thinking about it, I never even told you what my experience was, but you were so generous in sharing with me the chakra collection of the essences. And
Yeah.
everything with some things that are natural, I get nervous just because listen, I'm allergic to apples, legit. Like I'm allergic to almonds, right? So everything, I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
are
can
you
I take
allergic
it?
to like pectin?
So I don't know if that's what it is specifically. If you look it up, it's considered
Yeah.
I forget what they call it, but there's a name for it. So it's
Well,
basically,
almonds have cyanide in them. Yeah.
oh,
Like
well, listen, I can't take
legit.
that. That is
Yeah.
crazy. But there was one, and I'm gonna have to look at the bottle to see which one has the most missing of it. And the thing that was so interesting about it is taking that tincture, because I only wanted to do one at a time to see, I
Yeah.
wanted to know what that particular one did. It felt like the best way I can explain it is it felt very similar to the experience of when you meditate and you start to feel like that clarity of mind.
Yeah.
But it's an energetic thing. It's not really like a physical, it feels more like this intangible sensation that you can
Yes. The
feel.
one that gives me that the most is the nasturtium flower essence, which I named it Orange Glow
Uh,
because that was my attempt to describe the feeling. And it
yes.
might be, this one for me was like I could tune into the earth grid,
Uh-huh.
right? And I
Yes.
saw like pockets of light or ether in
Yes.
nature. And it blew my mind because I don't trip on psychedelics, by the way.
Interesting.
But flower essences, which are 80% water, facilitate something a little bit more interesting for me.
Yes.
And lately, I've been taking Thug Rose, which I named after my favorite UFC fighter, Rose Namajunas. And it's just garden rose, and I have been so tender, emotional, sleepy.
Uh,
Like it's really about heart chakra healing. And to heal the heart chakra, things are going to come to the surface. And for them to come to the surface, you need some negative space. You need downtime. You need quiet, stillness, and solitude.
I'm going to throw this out to you.
Yeah.
You know, obviously take it or leave it, but going through this whole cycle of perimenopause, like everyone I
Oh,
know,
yeah.
not everyone, but most of the people I know, we're all in the same, boat. And everyone's been looking for all of these natural ways. So one of the things that I found was it was a tincture that's made out of basically like herbal essences. It's
Yeah.
like these Chinese herbs, whatever. But that has been the most helpful. But I
I
wonder
make
if there's a
one out of
concoction.
evening primrose
That's where I was going to
called
ask you.
maiden mother crone, which is a reference to Hecate and the
Yes.
crossroads of female life.
Yeah.
And it's gentle, so it's not a concentrate or anything. Because unless you go through FDA stuff,
Yeah.
it gets tricky when you
Yeah.
start to get to medicinal levels of a compound or an herb. But evening primrose is amazing. I actually take it as a tea as well. I dehydrate the
Ah.
primrose flowers at night. I'm detoxing from birth control. I'm at the tail end of it, but I've gotten, I'm finally experiencing PMS at the age
Wow.
of 41, kind of. And it sucks. And I don't have the emotional or psychological strength. I
Yeah.
have not experienced this before.
Yeah.
And so taking that before bed helps me. I'm a much hotter sleeper now. And
Mm.
I'm not even at the menopause door. I'm
Yeah.
going to be a volcano when I get there, I'm sure. So yeah, I would say in Chinese herbalism and Ayurveda, they use different herbs.
Hmm.
I studied European herbalism mainly because it's like I got enough problems and hard
Yeah.
words to learn,
Right.
but also I wanted to work with things I could grow.
Right.
And a lot of those compounds are really tricky. Like growing ashwagandha is
Hmm.
not easy in
Yeah.
this climate. So yeah, Chinese herbalism, there is nothing like it for hormones, truly, and acupuncture. I can't
Yeah.
recommend it enough. I don't do those things, but if you know an acupuncturist, go see them.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine
Fertility
also,
too.
for that same reason, perimenopause boat, she is going to an acupuncturist and it's helped her tremendously. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I figured even though you're working with like a different family of
Yeah.
Earth, that there must be some concoction there that also works with these changes and balancing in some way. So yeah, I'm gonna go read
Yeah.
about that on your site when we're done.
And anything with terpenes in it. And when we hear terpene, a lot of us tend to think marijuana bud,
Mm,
but it's that's actually lower in terpenes than things like lavender or rosemary, common kitchen herbs. So it's that sticky resin.
yeah.
That's what you want for reducing what they call heat in an herbal sense or inflammation, right?
Okay.
So they have a stimulating but ultimately cooling, metaphorically, effect on the body. And they help with things like joint pain and all that good stuff. I make one, actually, Etsy kicked it off. Someone reported it.
Oh
Isn't that
no.
nice? People are so nice. And it's made of hemp. And
Uh-huh.
it's obviously not active CBD. I didn't decarb or I activate the, whatever. It's not
Yeah.
even, it's hemp, by the way. What do you do? Get high on hemp? That's adorable. But it's called a good buzz. And it's phenomenal for things like joint inflammation. For me, for menstrual cramps and things like that. But even when I had it on Etsy, I couldn't say any of that.
Yeah.
That's how oppressed herbal and alternative medicine is in our
Yeah.
country. It's wild.
Okay, so we are coming to the end of this hour, so I just want to highlight, the even the offerings you have around the things that we spoke of, which, this is fun because who knew what we were going to get into. But could you tell everyone about your business of woo? Because we really did start there. But also, I will put the links for the tinctures as well as the flower essences oracle deck in the
Oh, yeah.
description. Yeah, but can you
Thank
tell
you.
us about the business of Woo and how people can be a part of that?
Yeah. So it came organically out of all the other things I do. My client said, "You really need to do this. We need help with this." And that was one of those you shoulds that I was like, "I probably should. This is good." And if you go to my website, there's tabs. One says coaching, one says mentor, and click on it. You can book a free consultation with me to discuss the
Mhm.
program. I send you a bunch of details, but effectively, it's working together for either 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months.
Okay.
I've been blown away that the overwhelming majority of people do 6 months.
We need
I thought it
time.
was going to be the opposite. And it's just about getting into, anywhere on the spectrum from figuring out what your unique gifts are and how to bring them to the marketplace, how to articulate them, how to generate what we call a value proposition and your differentiators. How are you different from everyone else who's Reiki attuned,
Yes.
including everybody in the city of Austin? And then implementing, like getting into real brass tacks stuff, like how to manage a Substack. Why parts of free promotional work and communication work that I think generate more yield than social media, where you just tend to get lost. And it's a bunch of time and energy and very little upside. So things like Substack, podcasting,
Yeah.
effectively giving people permission to just try to just do stuff.
Yes.
and see if you like it. Etsy, setting up an Etsy shop and getting into like, what is your profitability? Like, how much do your materials cost? Or, your systems you need to use. As a podcaster, you pay for these online systems
Right.
versus how are you going to capture revenue on that? Right. So, one of the things I've done with my podcast, because I didn't want outside advertisers, at least not right now, although
Yes.
Sheath Underwear hit me up, we could do something together.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But I had my friend Karen, who's a tremendous voice artist, do commercials that are kind of funny and cheeky for Totem, including the Business of Woo mentoring program. So those are the funny ad reads
Yes.
throughout the episodes because I'm spending money as you are. I might as well tell people about the stuff I'm doing. So just getting people out of shame, guilt, weirdness, discomfort with leaning into the business side, because the bottom line is if you can succeed on the business end of this, you can take market share from grifters
Hmm.
and dilettantes, and you can really make a difference helping people and change this conversation
Yeah.
around the woo, which I think we all need.
A
So
hundred
to
percent.
me, yeah, just getting the shamectomy is
Yeah.
important.
Well, that was the big part that helped me get over that because I did go through that in the beginning. Not that I don't know if it was shame as much as, everyone, there was a lot of criticism in this community
Yeah,
around charging
yeah,
for things. But it's like, one, I invested a lot in what I've studied and what I've learned and what I've read and all of these things. But even aside from that, I, I feel thankful that I can create content and provide things and services and classes that I know are of value for people, because there is a lot out there that people are paying for and they're not getting anything on their return. So I don't feel bad
yeah,
about it anymore. I feel thankful to be able to
yeah.
do it. But I have to
Well, you
say,
can't have a business that doesn't make money. That's called a
right,
hobby.
right. Yeah. And so anyone listening, stop feeling bad. No. But really,
Yeah, stop
truly,
feeling
like,
bad.
really think about even where those stories are coming from that are making you feel any guilt or shame around it. And then the motivation around why you want to do this in the first place. And it is going to require that we get
Yeah.
some
It
exchange.
was funny. I was on an IG live and I said someone mentioned my tarot deck and I go, "Yep," and it's self-published, labor of love.
Yes.
And someone goes, "God, you always say that." I go, "Yep, because nobody else is going to.
Yeah.
If I can't look out for me,
Yeah.
if I can't look out for my own fiduciary interests and my own business, if I'm not going to say to everybody that I believe in and what I'm doing, nobody else is coming to save you when you have a
Yeah.
small business. It is on you. And if
Right.
you love what you've done and if that's the truth, then just say it."
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I realize you've heard me maybe mention this twice. I don't even know who you are, by the way, side note. But also, it's like consistency of message is very good for you. It's
Yes.
not a problem. And if someone's annoyed with that, they can tune out anytime. It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking to the same five people every day either. So understanding, like, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. It's a classic corporatism. Yeah.
Listen, you gave everyone a class in this first part of our conversation, but I do want everyone to know, don't forget, you have this whole week to learn from Rachel. And I'm so
Oh,
excited that we get to do it this way. And just as a little teaser, I am going to be asking her about in the next episode about her podcast and about her Substack, but especially because a lot of people struggle with finding their voice around all of this work. But she also has a very interesting interest in cults. She is a
yeah.
whistleblower. The people she interviews, you want to make sure you tune in for round two. So we're going to dive into all of that. And thank you for joining us for the first part of this conversation. Hello, beautiful alchemist. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rachel White, the Skeptical Shaman. Don't forget, you can listen to her podcast called The Skeptical Shaman. You can also learn more about Rachel and her work on her website, totemreadings.com. And you can also follow her on Instagram at totem Rach, RACH. I will put the links to connect with her down in the show description. So remember, this is just our first hour with her. So if you want to join us for the second hour of conversation, which of course you should, this episode will air on Wednesday. So I will see you all on Wednesday. I thank you so much for being here. And remember to always journey in love.